Hey guys, welcome. We are live this morning. I think it's January 31st. Let me check my watch. It's January 31st. It's 11 a.m. Pacific, which is 2 p.m. East Coast time. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We're just going to give it a minute or so to let people come on. Today's topic, so just to let you guys know, today's topic is about cats and dogs and whether they can be vegetarian or vegan or what that whole deal is about. And I have some questions to answer from last week's live that I have my notes here for. So I hope your week is going well. I hope your weekend has gone well, and we're getting things done, getting things accomplished through the weekend. I know I tend to get a lot more done on the weekends because I can actually sit down and do stuff and not, I don't know, the weeks are hectic. So just to give you guys a recap, we're going to be talking about the topic of the video first. And so if you have any questions at all, go ahead and post them in the chat section. Also, if at any point during this video you are learning something, or you just like the content, or you just want to support my channel, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And if you look down there at that subscribe button, if you're watching live because you just came across the video, or if you're watching this as a replay, look down there at that subscribe button. If it's red, go ahead and click it and turn it gray. When that happens, a bell will appear. Click the bell, select all notifications, and that way YouTube can actually tell you if I post a video, if I'm going live, and if I post anything in the community center in YouTube. YouTube will let you know. So we're going to be talking about, can cats and dogs be vegetarian? That's the first thing on our agenda this morning, and I will take any questions you have, so go ahead and post them in the chat. Then I'm gonna just answer a few quick questions that people had from last week's live that I needed to do some research on because it was specific to the brands of food. And after that, we're going to talk about, really quickly, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 quick ways to learn how to read a pet food label, because there seems to be a lot of, what about this brand? How about this brand? What about this particular food? So I'm going to give you a few guidelines on how to read a pet label. So, yes, let's see here. So let's go ahead and get started with, can cats and dogs be vegetarian? And at the same time, can cats and dogs be vegan? Can't wait. Oh, hey, JR, thanks so much for being here and posting in the chat. If you, I think it's on the left-hand side on a desktop. If you are watching, that's where the chat is instead of down below, which is normally where the comments are, which is after the video is posted. So live is the chat, a replay is comments. So, oh, love your glass. Thank you. My eyes have just been bugging me. So I couldn't wear my contacts, but thank you for that. So I have a bunch of videos up on my channel about transitioning to a raw food diet, and just a few videos in general about kibble. And on one of those videos, I think it was Wednesday, somebody posted a comment about how terrible meat is, and that they were going to be switching their cat to a vegan diet. So I responded that cats are obligate carnivores. If you try to remove meat from their diet, they will die. And of course they replied and said, oh, well, we'll see what happens, which, oh my gosh, just literally broke my heart. So I replied to them again and said, listen, this isn't anecdotal evidence. This is fact. This is science. Cats are obligate carnivores. If you remove meat from their diet, they will die, period. And I didn't hear back from them, but it literally broke my heart, because people are knowingly doing this to their pets. Like, just because they're vegetarian or vegan doesn't mean that, we're totally different species from cats and from dogs, and cats and dogs are different species. So, oh goodness, JR sent a super chat of $5. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you. He says, great training as usual. Awesome. Thank you so much. So if you guys see, that's what a super chat looks like. It like literally highlights the comment, so I see it above anything else, and it really helps support the channel. So I really, really appreciate that, JR. Thank you so much. Ken says, hi Jessica, just passing by. Hey Ken, thanks so much for being here. We are talking about, you know, can cats and dogs be vegetarian or vegan? And I was just explaining what a person commented on one of my videos, and it really, like, it sank me to the ground. I was just so, it's like I've seen stories like this before, and I have seen where cats have died because people who are vegan think they can feed their cats a vegan diet, and it literally, it cannot work. It's not, you know, this is not anecdotal evidence. This is fact. This is science. This is that's biology. Cats are obligate carnivores. So JR asked Ken if he has dogs. I remember, Ken, I think last week you said you were interested in figuring out how to transition your cat to a fresh food diet, which is awesome. So we chatted about that a little bit. So I don't know, Ken, maybe you can post it in the chat if you have a dog. JR says you should share this channel in video, and then is that clapping? Oh, a wave. Thank you so much. I do hope you guys share the channel and you share the video. So I actually do have some information prepared for you guys. Just so it's not just me telling you. I mean, obviously I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you what I know because I've researched it. But so cats are obligate carnivores. And what is an obligate carnivore? It means, so obligate means with necessity or by necessity. So it is necessary that cats eat a carnivorous diet or a diet of meat. And that doesn't just mean muscle meat. That also means, I mean, if you've ever seen a cat maybe attack and eat a field mouse like I have, they literally eat the entire body and leave the head. And so they're getting everything. They're getting the muscle meat, they're getting the fur, which is good fiber. They're getting all of the organs, the bone for calcium, and so, and also anything in that animal's digestive tract. So a field mouse, whatever they're eating, which could be anything in the field, right? So if there are nutrients to be derived from that food that the mouse ate, the cat is also getting benefit of that nutrition. So cats need all of this to thrive. They need the muscle meat, they need the organ meat, they need the bone, they need calcium, they need fur or some sort of fiber, right? So that's what an obligate carnivore is. And yes, there actually are other animals in the animal kingdom that are obligate carnivores, including minks, dolphins, seals, sea lions, walruses. There are so many. Trout, or I'm sorry, specifically rainbow trout, salmon, hawks, eagles, crocodiles, a lot of snakes and lizards. All of these animals are obligate carnivores. So they, out of necessity, have to have a meat diet. They whole prey obviously is generally what they need, because whole prey is going to give them everything they need. They need all of the protein from the muscle meats, and they need all of the vitamins and minerals from the organ meats. And in the wild, animals know which parts they can and can't eat, right? So if there is a part of the body that is just really, really terrible for them, they're not going to eat it. And like in the case of my cat, his name was King Tut, and he unfortunately passed away about a year and a half, a little more than a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And he was an outside cat for a while, and we lived out in the country, and he loved chasing and hunting field mice. And I know it sounds gross, but it's completely natural. We would go outside, and in the driveway we would just find mouse heads. So he literally would eat everything but the head. And while I'm sure there are things like the brain inside of the head that are healthy, he knew what was good to eat and what was not going to be beneficial to him, or wasn't going to be the best thing for him to be eating, for whatever reason. But that's nature, right? So who are we to play God, right, and try to change nature? That's just what it is. So, and cats' teeth. I'm going to get into dogs in just a minute, and we're going to talk a lot more about teeth. But a lot of times, scientists specifically, when they are trying to figure out what type of animal, like if they're carnivores, if they're omnivores, if they're, if they primarily eat plant matter, they often look at the teeth. So if you just look at your cat's teeth, they are designed to take down prey and, tear it apart. So another thing that we know biologically, cats have almost no ability to form it's called niacin, and they get that from tryptophan. So they have really, and the word you may have heard before, they have really, really high requirements for taurine. So foods that are deficient in taurine can actually lead to death in cats. If they're not getting enough taurine, they can't make it on, their body can't make it on their own, so they have to get it from their food, and that comes from meat. That's actually one of the biggest differences, and there are other differences, but that's one of the biggest differences in cat food and dog food, is that cat food has a lot more taurine in it, because dogs actually can make some taurine on their own. Cats cannot. So when we're talking about, it's really easy for us to get in this mindset, because, we live alongside dogs and cats, and we tend to start acting like they're humans because they're part of our family. And in some ways that may not be, the most horrible thing, but in other ways we really do need to be very, very aware that they are a different species from us. And where that really, really matters is in in health, right? And taking care of them. So that's nutrition and medical care. And so we really need to be aware that we can't say, well, I want to be vegan this week, so I'm going to make my cat vegan, or I'm going to make my dog vegan. It doesn't work that way. And they're completely different species than we are. It's fine if you want to share your bed with them, but you can't feed them the way you feed yourself. And that's not to say that there's a difference in human food and cat food, or a difference in human food and dog food. That's not true either, because we also eat meat. We also eat other animals. Food is food. It's just a matter of what's more appropriate for one species versus another. So I really hope that specifically really kind of solidifies in everybody's mind that cats are obligate carnivores. You cannot remove meat from their diet. Like, period, end of statement, that's it. Like, there is no question about it. That's fact. And you can sick all the fact checkers on me you want. It's fact. So I think let's go ahead and turn our attention over to dogs, because dogs, there seems, for some reason, to be debate over whether dogs are omnivores or carnivores. And I think that is because we do tend to feed dogs some vegetables. Not everybody does. Even, people that make their own, their their homemade food for their dogs, not 100% of them feed vegetables, and those dogs are not dying, but some people do. And generally, while this isn't exact, if you're doing a pre-made, a raw diet at home, a general rule of thumb to start off, and I'm not saying that this is completely balanced, but it's a good way for people to start out, is the 80, again, the 80-20 rule, but the 20 actually is broken down. So 80% muscle meat, and then the other 10% of their diet, you have 5% has to be liver. Period. End of story. There's no debate about that. 5% has to be liver. And then the other 15% is bone, and it can be vegetable matter and other organs. So bone, other organ meat, and some people put in vegetables. And that's totally fine. Dogs can digest vegetables easier, especially if they are slightly cooked, like steamed, or at least ground up already, so that the body doesn't have to work as hard to break them down. So I think that's where the omnivore debate comes in, because omnivores can eat, or should eat, not just meat, but can also eat plant matter. So the thing is, and here's where we're going to get into biology a little bit more, and how scientists specifically look at the teeth of an animal to try to figure out if they are strict carnivores, or maybe they strictly eat plant matter. If you have an animal that has all like flat teeth, like our molars are, then you're going to say, well, that animal is primarily eats plant matter, right? There's no way they're going to cut through flesh with those teeth. So, but carnivores, their teeth are different. Like we were just talking about with cats, if you look at their teeth, I mean, they have some long fangs, right? They are designed to attack their prey and immobilize them and just rip through them. And if we're looking at dogs' teeth, the same thing is true. There are other ways that we know that they're carnivores as well, but so they look at the size, shape, and then the way the teeth fit together. And over time, because we change, right? Species change over time, over long periods of time, because we adapt to fit our environment, and we adapt to fit what food is available to us. So herbivores, that was the word I was looking for, not vegetarian. So herbivores who primarily, or who just eat plant matter, which would be like horses and cattle, they have long, large, wide molars, like I was just saying, like our molars, but theirs are obviously a lot bigger, with flat surfaces, so they can grind the plants because they need to, because they're really, really high in fiber. So a lot of animals, a lot of herbivores spend their entire day eating, because it takes so long to chew and grind down all the plant matter. But carnivores, so the carnivore's teeth are designed to rip and tear meat from the bone and then gulp it down. And then their stomach actually does the digestion. So canine teeth, dog teeth, are long, pointed, and sharp. So if we are looking at their teeth, like we just looked at the cat's teeth, we know just from the size, shape, and how their teeth fit together that they are supposed to be carnivores. They should be ripping and tearing meat from bone. That's what their teeth are designed to do. So we know just from that they're carnivores. There are other ways that we know. The length of the GI, can't talk today. The length of the GI tract is another way that we know, and the necessity of omega-3s is another way that we know, because you're not getting omega-3s from plant life. You're getting omega-3s from like fish and other they're fatty acids, so they're coming from flesh and from meat. So that's another way that we know that dogs are carnivores. So while they can eat some vegetables, and there certainly are some vegetables that we feed for certain reasons, like the high level of nutrients in broccoli, or when we are trying to help our dogs lose weight, but so we reduce the amount of food we're feeding them, but we still want them to feel full, we can supplement with green beans. So there are some uses for some vegetables when we're feeding our dogs. However, it's not a necessity. As long as they are getting all of the nutrition they need from the meat and the organ and the bone that we're providing them. And the reason that some people do supplement with vegetables, and I do too, I supplement with vegetables, and the food I feed Kim, she primarily eats Answer's pet food, and it has some vegetables in it. They're fermented vegetables, just like the meat. It's a fermented product, because when we look at the nutritional value of, say, a chicken today versus the nutritional value of a chicken in the wild, like a chicken that we buy at the grocery store who came from some sort of farm, whether it was a factory farm, more than likely, or even a small local farm, versus the nutritional value of a chicken who is just living out in the wild, which I don't even know if chickens live out in the wild anymore. Hopefully they do somewhere. And also, when we look at the nutritional value of a chicken today versus a chicken 100 years ago, it's changed. So that's another reason why some people will supplement with some vegetables to make up for the nutritional deficits in the chicken available to us today, like at the grocery store. JR says, that's why humans should not be on a raw diet, because we have evolved over time to eat cooked food and our digestive tracts can't handle raw diets. That's very interesting. I haven't looked into that because I don't want to eat raw food, or raw meat specifically. But yeah, I mean, we have been cooking our food, humans have, since the invention of fire, right? Which was in like caveman days. So yeah, I would imagine over time we definitely have evolved to thrive on cooked foods, even though we know when we cook something we lose nutrition, right? The nutritional value changes. But that's, yeah, we have, of course, that's what happens in evolution. We evolve, and every species evolves to thrive on what is actually available to them in their environment, whether that's food or housing, because we also used to live in caves. That's why they call them cavemen. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. So I hope that clarifies things for anybody watching. And if you know anyone who is on the fence, like whether they think dogs are omnivores versus carnivores, or if they think they can remove meat from their cat's diet, I strongly urge you to share this video with them, because it's literally life and death. It's sad. But it is. It's life and death. JR says that's why cows have so many stomachs to grind up the grass they eat. Exactly, because it takes a lot of energy and effort, and that's why they eat all day long. Because not only does it take a long time for them to actually chew it up and grind it up, it takes a long time for them to digest it. So I want to get a couple of questions from last week answered. I'll do that really, really quickly because I'm not sure if these people are here, but I will definitely, if you're not here, I'm going to tag you so that you can come back and watch the video. So Angela was asking me about Taste of the Wild. Jennifer was asking me about For Healthy by Diamond Pet Food. And Melanie was asking me about Now Fresh, which is in Canada. So really quick, JR says, we lose some nutrition, but cooking actually brings out other nutrients, such as breaking down the cell walls of beans and legumes. Yes, because we can't eat raw beans and legumes. Otherwise, we couldn't eat them. Exactly. So yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense. So I'm going to answer these questions from last week, and then I'm going to go over just a few quick, I've got my notes here, a few quick tips to help you read a pet food label. So Angela, Taste of the Wild is owned by Diamond Pet Foods. And Jennifer was asking about For Healthy by Diamond Pet Food. So both of these are Diamond Pet Foods. So I did a little digging. It looks like Diamond Pet Foods is owned by Shell and Campter Incorporated, which I haven't yet found a link to any of the big three, meaning Smucker's, Nestle, or Mars. I haven't found a link to them yet. So I guess they're still a smaller company. And the last recall that I found on Diamond Pet Food was a salmonella recall in 2012. So that was the last thing I found on them. And then Melanie was asking about Now Fresh, which she's in Canada, and that's a product only available in Canada. It is made by a company called Pet Curian. And the thing that I found, which kind of stopped me with Canada, is that they don't have the same regulation we do here in the US. So I didn't feel like, I tried reading one of the pet food labels, and while it's very similar to a pet food label you would find here in the US, it's a little bit different. So the regulation is very, very different. So, and in some cases, diminished. In fact, the regulation is diminished from what we find here in the US for pet food specifically. But interestingly, what I've been learning lately, because I've just been more into politics, and it actually, you would think that these two things don't overlap, but they do. So these big companies, right? So whether you're talking about like a Facebook or a Microsoft or, a Hewlett Packard or, Oracle, these big companies, we're talking about Mars now, who owns most of the pet food, or Nestle, who actually owns about a third of the pet food out there. So we're talking about these big companies. What they do is, of course, we've all heard of lobbyists. You would think that these companies would want less regulation, because more regulation means more hoops that you have to jump through. It's actually a little bit different. So from what you might think, more regulation is actually good for them, because it's really easy for them to follow through with any regulation. One, because they have teams, hordes of lawyers who can either get them out of it because of loopholes that they have found, or who can keep things tied up in court for years, or who can just, change documentation, or, whatever they need. They just get it done, basically. They have the resources to get it done. Also, they help create that regulation, so it benefits them. Now, small startup companies don't have the same ability that these big companies do to follow and to get all of this regulation right. Like, I say right, but a lot of regulation isn't really designed to help the consumer, is what I'm getting at. A lot of regulation is designed to help keep these big companies powerful and owning the market, where little companies can't compete because of all of the regulation. They never, rarely ever get enough market share to make any impact on these big companies. So that's really why these big companies love legislation, because it keeps them at the top. It keeps them the big guy, right? So that's why I think we have so much more regulation, here in the U.S. because, these big companies lobby for it so that they stay at the top and kind of smash these little startups and fledgling companies so they never get any of their market share. So I hope that answered the questions from last week. But more so I want to empower you to be able to answer your own questions a lot of times. So reading a pet food label, and I just have my notes here. So any sort of meat meal, and this is very, very common. When we look at a package of food, when we look at the ingredients label, even on the front of the label, some of the packaging, sometimes it'll say, chicken meal or beef meal or salmon meal, whatever it is. And so meal means, JR says he's been studying to keep up with me. Thank you. Said that down before I spill it. Okay, so meal means that, any leftovers from a slaughterhouse, any carcasses, any offal. And offal, according to the USDA, is anything not fit for human consumption from an animal. So those are what makes up a meal product. So when you're looking at a label, so you can understand what that means. It doesn't mean that you're getting fresh, whole, big, wonderful cuts of meat like you would get at the grocery store. You're not. You're getting any leftovers on the slaughterhouse floor, you're getting carcasses of animals, and you're getting offal, which is anything the USDA considers not fit for human consumption. That's what's going in to that pet food product that you're buying. High heat processing is a rendering process, and we have talked about this a lot. They basically like really, really high heat, 400 or 500 degrees for extended periods of time, and they take that meat, because it's not a really good quality of meat to begin with, they render it down. Generally, pet foods will go through 2, sometimes 3 rendering processes, and at the end of it, you wind up with this like sawdust like powdered product. And pet food companies love this so much because it's shelf stable, so they can literally just store it in like silos. They don't have to refrigerate it. There are no storage concerns for them. This is also why, because they're storing their foods in this way, and they're storing, corns and things that they're using in this way. This is why these molds, like aflatoxins that we talked about last week, are forming in the pet food, because they don't have any problem, like they don't refrigerate anything. It's all shelf stable to them. So when we're looking at an ingredient label on the back of the bag, one thing that is going to be very, very beneficial, and Rodney Habib actually coined this term, is the salt divide. So when you're reading a pet food label and it starts out all wonderful with, they try to make sure some sort of meat product is first, whether it's turkey or beef or chicken or salmon or whatever it is. They try to make sure some sort of meat product is first. And as you're reading through the ingredient list, when you get to salt, that's where you can kind of divide that ingredient label, because according to AFCO regulation, who is the regulatory body over the ingredients in pet food, and pet food labels and pretty much everything about pet food. So salt cannot be more than 1%. So you know that wherever you see salt in the ingredient label, anything after that is going to be less than 1%. Anything before that is more than 1%. So oftentimes when you see on the front of the packaging, you see all these beautiful, vibrant colored, fruits and vegetables, and there's blueberries and spinach and all of these wonderful, beautiful vegetables and, bright red meat or bright white chicken. When you actually look at the ingredient label, all blueberries and whatever kind of vegetables are actually going to be listed after salt, so it's less than 1%. That's another really good key. Also, when you are reading a pet food label and the ingredient label, ingredient splitting is one of the most heinous things that companies do, because you might actually have a product that has 30% corn and 20% rice and only 18% chicken. And they're allowed to do this, they take corn and rice and they break them up. And they say there's corn meal and there's corn flour or something like that, right? And when they do that, they say there's, maybe only 15% of each. Well, chicken was 18%. So now they can put chicken at the front and then cornmeal and corn flour, and then they break up the rice as well. So it allows them to put chicken first on the ingredient label, when in fact, if you add up all forms of corn, you're going to wind up with way more corn than chicken. You see what they did there? So when you're looking through the ingredient label, if you're seeing things listed more than once, know that's because they legally did what is called ingredient splitting, so that they could put meat at the very front, the very first thing on the ingredient label. So if you're seeing more than one of something, like corn or rice or peas, that's another good one. They'll put peas and then they'll put pea protein and pea flour, and you add all that up and it's way more than the actual meat that's in the product. So you're actually paying for corn instead of chicken, basically, is what's happening. And I'm just using corn and chicken as examples. This applies to anything on the ingredient label. You also want to look, when you're reading the ingredient label, how much of this is actually carbs and sugars, right? So if you're seeing potatoes and you're seeing peas have a ton of sugar in them. Corn has a ton of sugar in it, and we know sugar translates to carbs in the body. So, carbs translate to sugar. Which one is it? I'm going a little loopy today. So either way, they're both bad for us. Carbs translate to sugar, sorry. So, and we know when we feed ourselves sugar, and I'm not being like all righteous about it. I eat a ton of sugar. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I don't feed my pets sugar. JR says, ingredient splitting, that's crazy and interesting. It is, isn't it? And, of course, I just have to say it, the new head of the USDA is the head of Monsanto, so yay, humanity. But anyway, so we also want to think about how fast oils and fats spoil. So when we're looking at, first of all, to make your dog or cat want to eat that kibble, manufacturers will often take a fat, generally during the rendering process, when they render the meat that they get, carcasses and dead animals from farms, etc., etc. Well, in that rendering process, a lot like when you cook, fat will rise to the top, and they skim that fat off, and they will use it later on to coat the kibble so that your pet actually wants to eat it. But when we think about how quickly oils and fats spoil, if you have that bag of kibble that is shelf stable, but it's coated with these oils, or they're adding in oils and omega 3s and fats, not just to make it more appetizing to your pet, which is one of the ways make it seem like your pet wants to eat that food because they coat it in these oils and fats, but also to add back in nutrients, right? So when we think about having that bag of food open in a shelf, a pantry, I mean, for what, weeks and months, that fat and those oils have gone rancid, and we're feeding our pets rancid fats. It's nasty. It's actually really harmful. I don't want to say it's toxic, but potentially. It's very harmful, and because when our pet's body try to break down rancid fats, it actually creates a carcinogenic. I don't know. I'm gonna try to say that again. Carcinogenic effect in the body. Oh, Angela's here. Yes, so I did talk about Taste of the Wild a little bit earlier, Angela. It's owned by Diamond Pet Foods, and Diamond Pet Foods is owned by Shell and Campter. The last thing I could find on them was that there was a salmonella recall in 2012. I didn't see much of anything more about them since then, but I've been going through, and I'm about halfway through a list of little tips and tricks to help you read a pet food label. So stick with us, but definitely come back to this video once we're done with the live. You can actually watch it back through to learn how to actually read that pet food label, because there's a lot of different Taste of the Wild, or any company has a lot of different varieties of foods out there, and their labels are all different a little, but so I'm actually trying to give you information on how to read the label that you have right in front of you. So so we were just talking about how fast oils and fats spoil and go rancid. Okay, so when you're looking at a pet food label, generally on the front of the bag, it'll say something like with chicken, or with beef, or with salmon, or whatever it is. So they'll have, some really beautiful, wonderful, fancy, home style meal with chicken or with beef. So that with that they're using means that whatever they say it's with, so if they say it's with beef, they only have to have as little as 3% of that product. So if they say, artisanal, handmade, select cuts with beef, right? It only has to have 3% beef in the entire packaging. Now, they may have a little bit more than that, and generally they will, because they have they want to get that meat to the top of the ingredient label, but it's not going to be that 80% that your dog or cat your dog actually needs. Cats need a lot more. So with means 3%. Also, if the package says dinner or entree or recipe, so if it says, beef dinner or beef entree or beef recipe, again, they only have to have 3% of that in the whole product. So, sorry, I said that wrong. I was reading the wrong line. So with is 3%, but dinner, recipe, or entree, they only have to have 25%. So that's a little bit better, right? But 25% is a lot better than 3%, but it's still nowhere near the 80% that your dog needs. And for cats, it's upwards of more than 90%. And if they use the word flavor, there's actually absolutely no requirement to have that product anywhere so if they say salmon flavor, for example, they don't have to have any salmon whatsoever in that product. So those are some like buzzwords and key things to look at when you're reading a pet food ingredient label. So yeah, I actually have a video on my channel about, so we went into Costco, and there's Kirkland brand dog food, and it is a very, very popular brand of food. And I went over, with everything that I just told you, I went over that pet food label and kind of broke it down and dissected it. So if you're interested in how to actually apply that with a pet food right in front of you, definitely check that video out on my channel. JR says, how can they lie and get by with it? Well, the thing is, they make the rules, right? They make the regulation, and they work with the USDA and AFCO to make the regulation. And so technically they're not lying. The thing is, you can get access to all of the rules and regulation that pet food companies have to abide by. The trick is that you have to pay for it, and that's really interesting to me. It's like $100 a year, or it's either $100 or $200 a year to join AFCO. And what's really interesting is that this information for human consumables is free. They have to give it to us. If we know where to go to ask for it, or if we know where to go to look for it, if we go to the FDA website, for example, we can find pretty much any information we want about consumables available for humans. But consumables in the market for our cats and dogs, that information is not free. We have to pay for it. So it's another really, really wonky thing. And the reason we have to pay for it is because they don't want us to have access to it. They want to lie to us and trick us. And I mean, my opinion, of course, this is all my opinion. This is all anecdotal evidence. However, my opinion is very, very strongly that they don't want us to know what they get away with, which is why I advocate as much as possible, feed the best diet that you can afford to feed. And I'm not perfect. In fact, I have some elderly cats that are sick, and right now I feed them anything they are willing to eat, because that's part of what palliative care is about, is just giving them, managing every day to make sure that their quality of life is as good as it can be. And if they don't eat, then their quality of life is not going to be very good, and their life is not going to last much longer. So giving them, that's just what it is. And I'm not thrilled with what they're eating. I take that back, because my sickest cat, he recently has decided there's a food that he likes now, and it's actually pretty decent. It's a Weruva product, so it's actually pretty decent. But it is what it is. We do the best we can for our pets, and it's fluid. It's something that changes. So that's why I advocate to just get as much information as you can, and keep researching, and keep learning, and keep wanting more, and do the best you can with what you're able to provide to your pets. So I packed a ton into this video. So definitely, if you missed part of it, check it out, rewatch it after the live ends, which we are about to do. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much for participating and posting in the chat and asking questions, and just participating. I really appreciate you guys. Share this with any and everybody who has a pet, because even if they, aren't trying to change their dogs or cats to be vegans or vegetarians, the second half of this with the pet food information, the pet food label information, is very, very informative for anybody who owns a pet. So I do hope this helps you. JR says, thank you for doing it. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. I do hope you give this video a thumbs up. I really tried to put a lot into it today. And if you look down there at that subscribe button and it's red, click it and turn it gray. And then click the bell and select all notifications. So YouTube can actually tell you anytime I post a video to my channel, or if I'm going live, or whatever is going on. So thank you so much for being here. And I post videos on Wednesdays, and I will continue to come on live Sundays as long as y'all will have me. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.